Hello everybody, I'm Mr. Zinzin. Today I tell you the most thrilling and horror-esque stories. Please subscribe, share and enjoy. This is my second story submitted to this site. My first was about sleep paralysis and something like an evil, red eyes watching me. As I've mentioned on one of my comments before, I do feel like someone is watching me whenever I'm at the kitchen. It's always when I'm washing the dishes. I can feel my back burning. There's a door behind my back. Across it, there's a vacant lot with trees. But that's another story. Anyway, I have a 3 years and 4 months old daughter, single mom. We usually sleep in the living room because of what usually happens when we sleep in my room. Last week, we sleep at my room, due to personal reasons, and after a day or two, I'm fixing our bed in my room. Then suddenly she said, "I don't want to sleep there." A bald lady with red eyes keeps looking at me. Woo. I freaked out. After a long pause, I can't say anything. I asked her about it and she explained that she saw it standing beside the door looking at her. She even called it a monster. I just said and explained that maybe it was just her grandpa checking on her, which my dad usually do, even though my dad is not hairless. I moved our bed to the living room because I'm really scared at that time. I cannot sleep most of that night, afraid of being paralyzed again or dreaming something about the monster. Fortunately nothing happened that night. I'm so scared and afraid for myself but especially for my daughter. What am I going to do? How can I make the monster disappear? How can I protect my daughter from this kind? Please help me. I don't want anything to happen to my daughter. I worked at Peter W. Thompson Academy, an accelerated high school for students who had trouble thriving in a regular school setting. There were lots of students with behavioral problems, serious family issues, failing subjects, and many were teen parents. It was a last resort for many kids. Peter W. Thompson was a principal at the academy who was well known for giving much of his time, energy, and funds to the school. He had been diagnosed with cancer and died many years before I began working there. To honor him, the school was renamed, and a large photograph of Mr. Thompson was hung in the Great Hall for everyone to see. One afternoon, my daughter asked if she could be dropped off at my office after school. She was in 2nd grade at the time, so I knew she could keep herself busy coloring or playing on the computer while I finished my work. When she got to my office door, she immediately asked for change to buy a snack and drink from the vending machines. The machines were located in the student break room, where kids played pool and foosball during their lunch break. I had no problem letting her go to the machines alone because all the students were gone for the day. She came back to my office a short time later, snack and juice in hand. I started some small talk with her, but she seemed to have something on her mind. I asked if she was okay, and she said, yes, but she had a question. "Mama, where is the principal's office here?" I laughed and said, "Well, you know Miss Thurman's office is right next door to mine." I thought it was strange of her to ask such a silly question since she had visited Miss Thurman's office numerous times to visit. "No, Mama. The principal's office," she said impatiently. I repeated that her office was next door. She sighed and said, "Then where is that man's office?" I thought at this point she was mistakenly referring to one of the male teachers as the principal. "Mr. Smith's office is down the hall," I said. At this point, she was getting red in the face. "No, Mama. The man who was in the break room just now. He asked if I would buy him a soda and he made me laugh." Thinking that there must have been a student still in the break room, we walked to the vending machines together. I looked around, but I didn't see anyone. I asked my daughter what the man looked like. She began describing a man with a mustache and gray hair. At this point, I began to be frightened that some stranger was wandering around the school. We left the break room so that I could call for help. As we were crossing the Great Hall, my daughter pulled my hand. "There he is. That's him. Where is his office? He was nice to me." I turned to see who she was pointing at, but there was no one there. She was pointing at the picture of Mr. Thompson, smiling down on us from his photograph. When I was younger my parents and I tended to move a lot, mainly because my mom despised staying in one place for too long. As she often said, there are simply too many things to do and see, so why settle? I was 7 when she got a job offer in Springfield, Missouri at the primary school. Of course she jumped on the opportunity and we said goodbye to Lebanon, packed up our few belongings and were off. She had found a nice apartment for us. It was 2-story 3BD 2-bath and cozy yet spacious, with lots of children for me to play with and only 5 minutes from the school she would be teaching at. Within a week we were settled and Mom was pushing me outside to socialize. I was always a socially awkward child, mainly because I was shy, making it really hard for me to relate with other kids, nonetheless communicate. I hopped on my bike and started riding the sidewalks, watching for someone close to my age to play with. Oddly enough, for a sunny Saturday there wasn't a lot of people out and about, so I headed towards a small playground that was between the 2 apartment buildings. It had a large tire swing and a slide attached to what looked like a clubhouse, so I parked my bike and started swinging. I had just gotten lost in my thoughts and cloud watching when I heard a female voice from behind me. "Hey, mind if I swing with you?" I turned, startled, toppling of the tire swing into the sand. A tall, thin girl with long wavy brown hair, wearing a button-down yellow sleeveless shirt and white capris, was staring at me, trying not to laugh. "You alright there, Jumpy?" she chuckled, extending a hand towards me. "Yeah, you just startled me," I said, brushing the sand off my back. "What's your name?" "Rebecca, but you can call me Becca." "And you?" "Aaliyah." "You still want to swing?" She smiled and climbed on the tire swing, waiting for me to join her. "So are you new here? I don't think I've seen you around." "Yeah, we just settled in not long ago." "How long have you lived here?" "A pretty long time, I guess." I looked at her, puzzled. How could she not know? I shrugged it off and changed the subject. We talked for the longest time about anything and everything that came to mind. For the first time in a long while I had finally found someone that I had something in common with. Maybe I have actually made a friend, I thought to myself, smiling as I watched a little boy and his mom heading toward the playground. "You want to come to my apartment and get a drink? It's kind of hot and you can meet my mom," I said, stopping the swing. No sooner had I finished my sentence, the little boy's mom walked up and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Sweetie, who are you talking to?" I turned around and Becca was gone. I looked around to see what direction she had ran, but she was nowhere in sight. "I was talking to Becca, she's the girl that was swinging with me. Did you see which way she went?" The woman studied me and shook her head. "She's loco, mama," laughed the little boy. I thanked her, blushing with embarrassment, and got on my bike to look for Becca, but I never saw her again, nor did I ever mention her until now. I'm not sure why she approached me or why she was lingering around the apartment complex. But I never will forget my disappearing friend.
All my life I have had experiences with the paranormal, though lately I've learned more about it. I have accounts from different family members to back up my own. All in all, it's just creepy. When I was a child I had an imaginary friend named Angel. She was a little bit older than me and I don't remember much about her appearance. It's been 12 years. I used to play with her a lot, and she didn't like my older sister very much. Once, my sister called me a name. I can't recall what she said to me, but I had told her that Angel was going to hurt her for it. That night she woke up screaming with bright red scratches across her back. They looked like they came from claws or somebody's nails. Also, a mirror in my house broke one day. My parents were yelling at my sister and me for fighting so much. We were in a living room on the main floor and both my cats were in the room with us. Suddenly, the 2 cats jumped up and started hissing. We heard a loud crash from upstairs a few seconds later. Upon investigation, my parents discovered that the mirror in the bathroom we all shared had been smashed. Nothing else was out of place. There were no windows in the bathroom and no way in or out of the house aside from the locked front door and the back door, which was next to us. That's not all that happened though. My older sister fully believed that Angel was a ghost. One day she borrowed my mom's video camera and walked into my bedroom without knocking. I was playing with my little ponies on my bed. I can be heard on the video saying, "No, I want to be her, the pony," And when I come into view I look as if I am pulling the toy away from something. When the space across from me is in the frame it gets fussy and slightly distorted. A pony is then thrown at my sister from the bed. She swears that I didn't throw it, but it is impossible to tell on the video. We moved when I was 6 and my parents put all the videos we had in a box. We never touched it again until 2 years ago, when we were repacking to move again. We opened the box to figure out what was in there and ended up watching all of the videos, including that one. After being freaked out we tapped up the box. My sister and I were talking about paranormal stuff the other day because of a separate incident. She reminded me of all this. It had slipped my mind due to things happening years ago. She tried to dig up the video. She had taken the box when she moved out for memory's sake. She found the box and the packing tape we used to seal it hadn't been removed from the last time we looked at the videos 2 years before. We wrote all over the tape for fun, which is how we know it's the same stuff. When she opened it, the video was missing. My cats avoided me whenever my imaginary friend was around. But when I didn't see her near me, they would come near me fine. They would stare and hiss at nothing almost daily. I didn't think much of it then, but now it's terrifying. Another thing to add, my next-door neighbor was 3 years older than me, when she was kidnapped and murdered in our previous town. I don't know if that means anything or what.
There's this one morning when my younger sister took my daughter for a shower with the door open in the bathroom. My daughter got scared out of nowhere and hugged my sister tightly while she was all wet and told my younger sister that my grandfather and father is sitting in our living room. My grandfather is sitting in the couch and my father is standing next to him. My sister thought she's just messing around with her because she's very playful and sometimes talks a lot about something that doesn't make sense. But this one is different. The thing about my grandpa and father is that they're both dead. My grandpa just died because he was so old a few weeks before my daughter saw him, and my father was 20 years dead already in a car accident when I was just 5 years old. My sister said she was shaking so bad and so scared, but my sister thinks she's just messing around because she thought, how would my daughter recognized my father when my daughter never saw him or doesn't know how he looks like? So I asked my daughter how did she know that it was my father. Then she said she knew what my father looks like because our youngest sister, who is 6 years older than her, showed her the picture of him a while back. Anyways, I asked my daughter what she saw just to know if it's consistent, and she told me the same thing as what my younger sister told me. I asked her what are they wearing and what do they look like, and my daughter said all white but they have blood stain in their shirts. Their eyes are all white and they look upset, and she starts crying. My daughter asked me why did they look at her so upset, and asked me if they are mad at her, and if they are, why. Me, my mom and my siblings were all just speechless with her question. Then I just told her they are not upset, that they are just watching over her like an angel. Then I asked her how did they looked at her, why she thought they're upset. She said they are both frowning and looking at her even if she saw them with all white eyes. It really gives me creeps because I never saw anything like that at our house, and it creeps me that it came from my daughter. I think she would be the last person I will think that will see things like that. But I had the feeling though, weird goosebumps in the back of my neck a few times, but I really didn't pay attention about it. My mom believes that they just want to visit and watch after her and us or want to say goodbye, but my daughter still thinks that they are upset to her for some reason. We just told her that they are not upset and that's just how they look. After that she doesn't want to be left alone, and the family discussed not to talk about it again or ask her anything about the things she saw so she'll forget about it. Now she's very good and never saw them again. Jolly as always, like nothing happened. P.S. Aside from my daughter, some of my friends who visited the house saw my father there too. I mean, the friends who saw him didn't see him at the same time. It was year after another more years. Anyways, they said he's just standing in the kitchen side, and my friends thought he's a visitor because they said he doesn't look dead but just looked at them. They didn't mention about the all white eyes though. My father doesn't have any picture around the house because my mom remarried and they just never put any pics of him. Same as my daughter's question. Why do you think they look upset? Anyone have any clue maybe? It's been a while since I wrote a story, mostly because I was so busy with life and having 2 little kids running around the house. I've had experiences with spirits all my life, so has my mother, and other members of my family. I did some research into this and I probably have some empath abilities, and probably some other abilities. I just can't put my finger on them all, nor have I developed them, and I don't begin to know where to begin with this. In any regard, I posted a bunch of stories about my house and the experiences I have been having there in the past. Because things got so busy in the house, I stopped paying attention to the various events. I have 2 kids, a 4.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, now, and an unbeliever wife, at least she doesn't want to admit to it. I had the house blessed at least 3 times, blessed it myself, with improvement in the activity each time, to the point there is just a level of baseline activity that is tolerable, such as seeing things in the corner of your eye, the feeling of being watched, and it happens in waves. What prompted me to write this, is that I wanted to see if anyone ever had experience with this, and the activity is starting to get stranger. A few months ago, my dog, Reggie, a 150-pound Rottweiler, who was as sweet as could be, and 7 years old, got very sick at my parents' house. He was 7 years old, and it appears my parents' neighbor poisoned him. He got so sick that he couldn't move. The vet diagnosed him with diabetes and pancreatitis at first. He didn't improve with treatment, and I had to put him to sleep. Prior to this, I got a tox screen on him and found he had high levels of arsenic and antifreeze in him. I can't even express how bad this has been for me, and worst off, I don't have proof the neighbor did it. Anyways, when Reggie was sick, my kids said they saw him walking around the house. He wasn't at our house at that time. My oldest son was convinced there was a black dog hiding in the closet in the sunroom of our house. He took me there. I couldn't see anything, but I did feel like I was being watched and did feel a presence. I did not acknowledge this. I asked him if it was Reggie. He said no, just a black dog. Another time, he saw Reggie in our TV room, and said it was Reggie. So the black dog freaked me out because he can tell the difference between Reggie the Rottweiler and a black dog. Also, the black dog was in the sunroom. My other son claims to also have seen the black dog. This happens on occasion, and there hasn't been a black dog sighting for a few months. Fast forward to the past few weeks. Out of nowhere, this putrid smell started to come out of the sunroom. The smell was that of rotting flesh. It's happened before and disappeared. This time it was in your face. It was so strong, you would gag in the room. I looked all around, couldn't find a source of the smell, looked outside, nothing, looked up in the rafters, nothing. I'm a physician, and I know how rotting flesh smells like, and this is flesh that is right in your face, so something was big and dead, or it was right there. Oddly enough, the smell would move from one corner of the room to another. As mysteriously as the smell came on, after a day or so, it disappeared. I've had this happen at my house before, and we couldn't explain it. We also have smelled the smell of incense that was used in the blessing in various areas around there, almost as being mocked. The strange thing is that my kids can play there when the smell is around and not be bothered one bit, and they don't smell it, only my wife and I. What bothers me even more now, is that my mother, who is with the boys while my wife and I are at work, was bringing my kids home from the library, and my oldest said, "I don't want to go home, it's haunted." My little one replied, "Yes, it's a demon." I have never talked to my kids about anything paranormal going on in the house, have never used the term haunted or demon around them. I don't even watch paranormal shows with them around, and I don't know how they came up with this. My 2.5-year-old keeps joking and saying we are going to die over and over as well. Now this kid is not afraid of anything. My oldest son has some issues with speech and sensory issues. Small noises scare him. He's easily scared, has a bit of a speech delay, otherwise is a normal kid. The kids don't act out, they don't interact with anyone who is or isn't there. What I have noticed is that my wife and I fight a lot lately, and it's usually over stupid things. come home from work and stupid things are said, or there is a feeling of hopelessness, in that this is the same Olay routine day after day. I know some of it is just the parenting blues and being tired, but this is all happening when my kids are talking about this haunting and a demon. In terms of what I've seen or experienced, I've had some really vivid and strange dreams, ranging from being lost in a field I've been at before, to things I can't remember but wake up remembering them. I occasionally see shadows in the corner of my eye, and sometimes, orbs or shadows right in front of me. I've sat in the sunroom by myself and kind of spaced out. I wouldn't call it formal meditation. I had this weird feeling or thought in my head that popped up that people were playing with a Ouija board in the sunroom at one time. Again, it was just a weird thought, and I'm not sure what that means or if I should trust this. I'm not quite sure what I should do. Part of me wants to invest in some EMF detectors and investigate this, another part wants me to try another blessing. What frightens me is that my kids see this and kind of know something is going on. Merry meet all. I apologize again for being so long since my last encounter shared. I am currently trying to figure out what is going on in my new home. For those of you whom are new, every single home I ever lived in growing up was haunted. That was until I moved to Arizona. Only then did I really get some peace, until my daughter turned 2. I have been seeing many little things, such as orbs on her monitor. We use camera baby monitors. I have made it a point to assume these were objects can be explained by dust, bugs, etc. Now this is an older model closed circuit of course, but now whenever my daughter is playing in her room the camera will completely glitch out. There are no storms around, no one else near my house has one. I know every one of my neighbors, only one other neighbor has a child and they use just the walkie-talkie monitors. Then I noticed her talking to herself again, started feeling weird in my own home, toys going off on their own, with no batteries in them. Nothing bad has come of this, I just do not want to say not deal with it because I am sure it is my family. My daughter keeps saying Meemaw and Peepaw, which is not what she calls any of her current grandparents. The only ones who have passed away is my grandmother and my step-grandfather whom I was very close with. My mom is saying it's her mom and probably my step-dad's father. Still it is a little unnerving they have not come and asked for permission first. They have asked before. Any help or suggestions? FYI, some stressors have come up. My mother was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer but has since gone into a full remission, and 3 months ago they found lesions in her brain that were cancer as well. Did not spread. Doctor said they were just too small to see before. We have not gotten the results from that, so we Skype my mother daily. She already went through radiation and they said so far it looks good. Could this be a contributing factor? Blessed be and stay safe. 3. This event occurred over the course of several months. Being in the military, I had moved to Kansas the year prior and decided to change houses when my first rental home's lease ran out. We found a house that was slightly smaller than the one we had been in before, less yard, but in a quiet street. When I say quiet, I mean nearly deserted. Of the 9 houses on our street, 4 are occupied, all the rest belong to an elderly couple that use all but the building they live in to hoard things. You can see the clutter through the windows. I had a group of friends over one day. While we were hanging out in my kitchen, the only female in attendance got a vacant look on her face and locked on the building next door, which she could see outside the kitchen window. She very softly said that the building was making her uncomfortable and was frightened by it. Her comment caught my attention. Since moving in, I had never really been able to relax. I always felt like the windows were watching me. After this, I started to notice strange things my daughter started doing. My daughter, Freya, was 2 years old at the time but spoke well enough she could communicate ideas clearly if with limited words. She began running away from windows at all hours of the day, screaming and flinging herself at me. When asked what was wrong, she would explain that Papa scared her. Papa is the name she used for my father-in-law who lives with us. This would always happen when he was not in the room, but in another part of the house. The house is basically a tunnel with rooms off the left side of it, and I knew that there was no way he was scaring her from outside the kitchen, being that it opened up to a small grass area on the right side of the house. Most of the time it happened he was at work. What got to me the most is that it happened day or night, from windows or doorways, even the skylight. On several occasions while returning home she would stare at the house next door while I removed her from her car seat. When asked what she was doing she would tell me she was looking at him and point. There was nobody in the pour next door, and the front windows were boarded over. As I came and went from the house I would see flashes of figures walking up and down our street, sometimes perched on branches in the trees. Always they were shadows, no features that I could tell, and would vanish if I tried to focus on them. In a handful of instances I would get hit with waves of dizziness walking through doorways outside, and on occasion inside my own home. The worst moment was a day I was in her room. She hated staying in her room at night. Even with a nightlight we would wake up to her sleeping on the couch huddled under a blanket. So while I was in her room changing her diaper I felt a sense of unease but suppressed it so I could get her cleaned up and in some clothing to go to the store. I felt something, a slight breeze, brush against the back of my neck and expected it to be the curtain hanging behind me. Freya looked right past me, frowned, and said very clearly, "Papa, don't touch Daddy." It was shortly after this I renewed my practice of Wicca. I had pushed it far from my mind when I got out of high school, having a grudge against all religious beliefs thanks to a stepdad who let his faith in Christ drive him near mad. I don't think Papa was malicious, but we took the time to cleanse and safeguard my house. My daughter no longer sees, or tells me about, the things she sees. I write this on October 20th. Over the last week I have had the figures returning in my mind, not my sight, but my daughter has not shown any behavior changes and I think she is still safe. Thoughts? I have posted other stories of my daughter's experiences, who has been seeing and hearing things that others would perceive as not normal. Last fall, age 11, we were both outside. I was taking out the trash and she was riding her bike on the parking lot in front of the apartment. As I was watching her after I threw away the trash, she screams really loud. I said, "What's wrong with you?" Elena said, "Something grabbed my leg." I told her nothing grabbed her because I watched her, nothing was around her. Elena showed me where and how it felt. She tried to find a reason and thinks it might have been the stick, which there was no way. As we are inside now, she finds her backpack, sits down and said, "It was a man." I gave her a questionable look and she said that it was a man that grabbed her. He whispered the word spirit to her. I told her to forget about it and let's work on her homework. Next thing we know we are hearing noises. Our jackets were moving that were hanging up on the front door. She was hearing footsteps in the hallway. As we were trying to ignore it she kept looking at the wall and had tears in her eyes. Elena was seeing shadow movement. She said she thought it could have been hers or mine but it wasn't as she tried to rule it out by moving. I told her enough is enough and ask him what he wants. When she did she waits a moment after asking to give him time. She said, "Mommy, he is talking, but it is hard to understand him." Then I told her to tell him to leave and she did it firmly. All of the sudden I could feel the air was lighter and now more comforting. Nothing else happened. I was proud of Elena. First she tries to debunk things instead of assuming it is paranormal now that she is older and not as scared. Even though these experiences has calmed down a lot she still has them, even at my friend's house that I babysit for. And Elena's experiences have been the same as my friend's but more. Elena never knew about what my friend has experienced in her house. But this was the first time she had been followed by a spirit into our home. So I am now 16 years old and believe I have been being followed by something since I was about 12. It all started one night when I was 12. I was living with my mother in the east of Scotland at the time. I had been lying in my bed at about 11 p.m. and just couldn't seem to get myself to sleep, which was unusual for me. My mother came upstairs to switch my TV off. I asked her to switch it off and tried to get to sleep. At this point my mother was only maybe halfway down the stairs when I opened my eyes to see a shadow of a female figure at the end of my bed. I jumped out and ran down the stairs to my mom. She decided I could sleep on the couch since I was too scared to be in my own room at this time. I was lying on the couch watching my stepdad play his computer when I seen this shadowy figure of a hand reaching down and touching his head. I then asked my mum to come to the toilet with me, was too scared to be alone, and she had been running a bath. The towels had went from sitting on the toilet to being inside the bath. About a year later I moved in with my grandmother. Maybe 2-3 months in, I noticed strange things happening at her home as well. Things being moved, my hairbrush would disappear for days and then reappear when I didn't need it. Recently I have been terrified to shower myself, as every time I go into the bathroom myself a horrible shadowy face figure appears at the window. I get a horrible uneasy feeling being alone in my bedroom, and me, my younger cousin who is 12 and my baby cousin who is 2 are terrified to go into the upstairs bedroom. We always get a horrible choking feeling, as if something is strangling me. I really don't know what this could be. Any ideas what could be happening?